This is the #1 trick to make your guitar solos better right away, or the #1 reason why your guitar solos are a little bit boring and blocking and sort of going nowhere. If you don't know, my name is Ryan. I've been teaching guitar players for over 2 decades how to break out of that pentatonic, sort of boxy, boring plateau that we all get into and really bridge the gap between their creative ideas and what they are able to play. Now, if you would, hit that subscribe and bell notification to get more videos on how to make your guitar soloing better. In this instance, what we really want to do is break away from saying nothing. You know, those guitar solos are saying nothing, right? Music is a language. The guitar is just a voice that we're singing or speaking that language through. So I want to be saying something. And when we're listening to our favorite guitar players play, they are speaking, right? We could hear it. That's what we like about them. And it's hard to identify when we haven't started using this sort of linguistic idea, this really musical idea in our own guitar playing. So the #1 trick is if we never forget what we just played or said, and we always consider what we just played, we will never get lost, right? And there's a million ways to work on this and really morph it into a great way to tell a story in your guitar solo. But let's start with the basics, okay? We need to train that muscle to never forget what it is that we just played. That's where we're gonna start. So you're gonna put a metronome on, and you're only gonna pick one small part of the scale. I'm gonna do the minor pentatonic, okay? So I'm gonna do just 8 and 5 on my E string for the minor pentatonic. You know, put that metronome on wherever it is, nice and comfortable. You're gonna play a lick that's rhythmically interesting, right? With those two notes, and you're going to directly repeat it. And then play a different lick and directly repeat it. And just do this over and over and over. It sounds like this. Another one. Okay, and just do this over and over and over. And start building that speed up, right? Start speeding up a little bit. And what you're gonna do is strengthen that, especially as you're getting faster and faster. Your brain's gonna have to start processing really quickly what it is that you just played. This is gonna really strengthen that muscle. Now, what we could do is just start adding the other parts of the scale. I can add the other 2 notes on the B string, right? If I do... and more and more and faster and faster. And we just start taking it to the G and the D string. All right, more and more and faster and faster. What we're doing is we're developing a vocabulary with a or I guess I should say, we're expressing a lot with just a couple of notes, right? Rather than just, we want to make it somewhat rhythmically interesting, right? And when it sounds like we're just running up and down the scale, we are, you know, and making something that's a little bit more rhythmically interesting is what is really going to help. I am going to put a link in the description for a tutorial that goes into rhythmic phrasing, making those phrasings more interesting with rhythm. If you need help doing that, that would be a great thing to start with. If you're finding yourself just sort of playing, right? We want to get away from that really simple rhythm, get to something that's a little bit more interesting. Now, when you're doing this, like we're saying, you're building vocabulary in each part of the scale. So when it becomes time to now solo using the whole scale, right? All 6 strings, you're going to be speaking very well, and you're not going to be getting lost. And that is the point. Now, when we move further away from this, as you're saying like, wait, I love all of these guitar solos that don't just play something and repeat it, play something and repeat it, is yes, we're going to now make changes, but still considering what we just said. We can start by making slight changes. So let's just take that first lick. Okay, cool. I'm gonna take that first one. If I wanna come back and repeat it, a little bit different, a little rhythmic change, right? That first note was a little longer, so. right? If I want to change it that way. There's the same succession of notes, right? But the rhythm is a little bit different. You can start doing that over and over and then building that speed up, So now you're just like, oh, I'm going to make like a small rhythmic change. And it can be just one note a little bit longer within that phrase, and then the other notes maybe a little bit shorter to make sure that it rhythmically fits within that bar, however you're deciding how long you want your phrases to go on, right? So, right? Oh, I did add an extra note there, which is the next part now. If we're sort of saying, all right, I have the same succession of notes, and I'm changing the rhythm a little bit, making a couple notes longer, a couple notes shorter, and it sounds cohesive. I mean, they sound like they go together. And what's really nice is there's enough repetition where it sounds familiar, and there's enough change to make it refreshing, right? Sometimes direct repetition might just get a little too stale for us, right? So that's really great. Another thing that we can do is just adding more notes. So, right, that was my change, my rhythmic change. I could do that, adding a couple notes in the beginning, right? Rather than just playing that 1/8. Now we're starting to add a new dimension. We're going to say, all right, I can change this rhythm around a little bit, and I can add notes. And I'm not adding notes, so to speak. I'm playing one note a couple of more times, or take it out. Right? Taking a couple of those fives out and just playing a few times. So now we're messing with the amount of notes and the rhythm. We're just getting another sort of layer of onion of creativity, right? It is different, and we're going to use that idea of, I know exactly what I just played, so I want to play something a little bit different to keep it fresh, Great exercise all around, the pentatonic scale. So now we're developing even more and getting into like 2 more layers of that sort of onion, right, in our vocabulary, okay? Which is that it's so profound to hear a guitar player sort of like tap into this stuff. What's really great now is we can move and tell even more of a story. I can have 2 licks. This is sort of an A, B, A, B idea. So I'm just going to go back again to the first one. If you hear that, it's one lick and then a second one, and then I repeat that A lick and then play the second one again. This has that little bit of a change, you know what I mean? But it's very cohesive because we're doing that sort of direct repetition. What is really cool too here is if I want that change, it's going to also happen in the rhythm that has a little bit more syncopation, obviously, than those sort of longer notes. There's a little bit of breathing room after something that's really syncopated. So I can now take that A, B lick, right? Play it all around, That could be it. Right? Just having that one note is such a break from what I just played. And when we're talking about the consideration, if I'm doing an A, B, like the example that I'm doing now, is the B is so much rhythmically different than the A, and I'm making that decision on purpose. I'm considering what I just played and purposefully juxtaposing it with the rhythm, right? And then coming back to it, of course, A, B, to give it that familiarity. Now I can do the same thing. Okay, slight changes, added a couple notes, a little pull off in there, right? But the A and the second A still very much went together, and then the B and the second B still very much went together, right? Now that muscle is expanding a little bit more. It has to sort of remember a little bit further back, right, from what we were doing, and get good at making small changes without just running up and down and sort of never considering what it is that we just sort of played. All of this, these are exercises that you can just do over and over and over. And I have heard, I don't want to say the guitar player because I'm not sure who it is, but a very amazing professional shred type guitar player that will do something like this, right? To sort of say, oh man, I have all of these options and sweep picking and tapping and like all of these really cool patterns that I don't want to utilize unless I can be really creative. So let me just go back to just playing 2 notes and see how creative I can get with just those 2 notes. It's always a really, really great exercise. And if you have anything that you try to do to make your guitar solos a little bit more interesting, I would love to hear it in the comments, of course. If I were to come in with okay, might sound a little bit more random, but those licks are starting to form into each other, drawing on the rhythm and the movement of the notes. Right? Even though some of the intervals were a little different, those are 4 relatively different phrases that are still starting to form together, right? And again, this is just because I've strengthened that muscle of never forgetting and always considering what it is that I just played. And this can go on and on. Now, the best part too is when we're doing this, we're learning something very musical and linguistic in this first position of the minor pentatonic. So when I say like, okay, I did like, just say like using space, this much learning. Now to do that in the second position of the minor pentatonic is not that hard because all of the music that you're learning here, right? All of the vocabulary that you're learning can just easily be learned in the second and the third and the fourth and the fifth position of that minor pentatonic. You don't have to relearn this. Now, when we get into modes and Dorian, we get into harmonic minor, melodic minor, enclosures, really, really tricky sort of like undiatonic chord progressions. We're developing the use of language through all of that. And we're doing it from the beginning with the minor pentatonic. And that's why this is so effective. It's, can I say a lot with a little? Can I say a lot with a little? Then if I'm adding more sort of colors to the palette as a painter, I'm going to be able to express more, And I think when we get lost, especially in that sort of beginning phase of just running the scale, a lot of people will play something like that and they'll say, what's the next position of the minor pentatonic? What's the next position? Give me a mode. What else should I use? And that's not what we need. We think it is, but that's a little bit more information math brain stuff. That if we don't know how to creatively use it, it just becomes information. We want to know how to creatively use just a little bit, that any time that we're starting to add more and more, we are getting better and better. So there's a lot in this lesson. If there's anything that you need, you can certainly comment below and I will do my best to get back to you. I have a couple of videos to check out in the description. Goes over some rhythmic phrasing and then also some bluesy and like note choice. So you're not just repeating the choice of notes is starting to become a little bit more conscious as well. So considering note choice as well as rhythmic phrasing and then going through all of this to develop that sort of vocabulary and push the story forward. And if you sort of do find yourself in that plateau, that very like robotic, boring guitar solo plateau that we absolutely all get into, and you're looking to bridge the gap between your creative ideas and what you're able to play and becoming fully fretboard fluent, I have a free training. That link is in the description and the first comment as well as a link to book a free call to see if you are right for our Fretboard Fluency mentorship program. So thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.